Hey, women of welcome. It's me, Brittany. I'm our discipleship coordinator. And today we're going to be going live with Elket Rodriguez. He is a new friend and wonderful, and I think you're all going to love him. He is with Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, and we're going to have him join us in just a minute. We've been hearing so much about the southern border in the news, and during this Christmas season, we really wanted to cut through the noise and talk to Christians who have faithfully been serving at the southern border to find out what's really going on there. And we are going to should be joining us right about now. So yeah, we're just really excited to hear how we can support them, how we can join in with the work happening at the border. And there he is. Hello, Elket.
Here I am. Hi, how are you, Brittany?
It
God
is
bless
so
you.
good to
Good
be with
afternoon.
you. We were just saying there is just so much noise in the news about the southern border, and we are just thrilled to talk to someone who's been faithfully serving there for a while and can tell us what's actually going on. So thank you for being with us.
No, thank you, and thank Women of Welcome for this opportunity. This is where my heart is. This is my calling. So yeah, anytime, any day, I'm here to help you and any organization, Women of Welcome, sort these things out, right? This misinformation that we're getting, and at the same time, information that we need to know, and how as Christians we should welcome and live our calling out loud. So thank you for this
Absolutely.
opportunity.
We really want to hear about your ministry, but I'm wondering if you can first sort of orient us. Where are you in the borderlands? What would we see if we walked out where you're at?
So I live in Harlingen, Texas. That's 50 minutes from the U.S.-Mexico border. But most importantly, it is 30 minutes from the McAllen, Texas, Reynosa, Mexico, and the Matamoros, Mexico / Brownsville, Texas international bridges that go across the Rio Grande, dividing the U.S.-Mexico border. So you have an idea. These two border crossings see anywhere from 40 to 60% of the border crossings into the U.S. each year, if you combine them. Yeah. I live in the area that's called the Rio Grande Valley. And so that is on the U.S. side. I'm going to talk a little bit about the U.S. side. The region where I live is, and I do most of my missional work, is the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. It has a huge, and by huge, I mean huge, Hispanic population of Mexican heritage, mainly, I would say many Tejanos too. And so this region is very policed by Customs and Border Patrol. It is very normal to see Border Patrol and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE, vehicles in the highway and in our communities. And these two government agencies are also major employers in the region. The Rio Grande, yeah, and the Rio Grande Valley kind of has its own culture. Many churches in this area are bilingual. It is not uncommon to see mixed status families where one of the parents is a U.S. citizen, but the other is not. It is also common to see family where one of its members works for ICE or Customs and Border Patrol, and the other family member does not have
Wow.
a permanent status.
We talked about difficult conversations,
Yeah,
but
it
that
is
is
very
probably next level.
well. Yeah, it is. So you have an idea. It is very common to go to a Hispanic church and have a Customs and Border Patrol supervisor, and who knows that there's an undocumented family probably in the church, which is a don't ask, don't tell policy. We'd never ask that when we approach people, obviously. But you could see different type of status, if you can say, and we all go to the same church and worshiping the Lord and spending time together. And so it is also common for families to have relatives on the other side of the border. So crossing the border for family gatherings is typical as well. And so I just want our audience to understand that our border communities, especially the Rio Grande Valley, depend on the other sister city community in Mexico commercially. But not just that, there is a family there. The Rio Grande Valley, it's kind of like uh, we have the saying. There's a saying here in the Rio Grande Valley that says that we did not cross the border crossed
More.
us. That gives you an idea. Yeah, that gives you an idea of how close some of these border communities are to their sister communities in Mexico. There is also a lot of poverty. We have a phenomenon that is called the colonias. I don't know if you've heard about it, which are substandard housing developments where residents, mainly immigrants or migrants, lack the basic services such as drinking water, sewage treatments, and paved roads. So this is also one of the poorest regions in the United States. But I can talk a little bit quick about the Mexican side, which I have not talked about, to give you a little bit of context. On the Mexico side, right now, the border region, I have to say, it's very dangerous, especially Matamoros and Reynosa. Right now, there are two criminal organizations, which I will not mention, that are fighting for turf control. And migrants that come to the border and are fleeing persecution are being trafficked every day and sometimes being caught up between these turf wars. Stories of rape, kidnaps, torture of migrants are fairly common, sadly, right? Especially with this policy that's the Title 42 policy that authorizes the rapid expulsion of migrants to northern Mexico without the opportunity to ask for asylum. That has also played into the hands, if you can say, of these criminal organizations. And many migrant men are forced to work for free for these migrants organizations in Mexico. And so to finish what I'm trying to say, so that you have a good glimpse or a good idea of how our communities are, what happens in these communities. In Mexico, when migrants are being expelled, many of them move to colonias in Mexico, which are the same situation in the US, but even worse in Mexico, places where there's no running water, living in makeshift tents, poverty and misery are rampant. And so there are Christians on both sides of the border, sheltering, feeding, and protecting migrants. But migrant shelters are overcrowded, and every day thousands of migrants continue to arrive into these border cities, especially in northern Mexico. And so you have an idea, many of the migrants that are coming to our border are Christians themselves, who are fleeing persecution because they don't want to, or they refuse to join in the gangs, the criminal organizations, or follow through with the corruptions in their governments. So sometimes the people that I interview, because I'm an immigration attorney as well, and do consults, are people that when you start listening to their stories and you ask them, why didn't you join the gang? If they're giving you opportunities to get more money, if they're doing such and such, they say, well, that doesn't go with my morals. And then when you get deeper, you may have a religious-based asylum claim. And so many of them are fleeing persecution, especially because of
Because that is so helpful to think about. I mean, it's awful to think about the situations that people are fleeing from, but I think it's a helpful perspective. Like a lot of us who are moms or aunts or grandmas, like that's exactly what we hope our kids would do. Say we don't want to be a part of that. Like we know a different way of living because of Jesus, and knowing that that's a big reason that people are coming to our border that's really helpful, and I think really eye-opening for a lot of us. Yeah, and that you're really painting a picture that these policies that are asking folks to remain in Mexico, that's not a very safe option for people. So what is Cooperative Baptist Fellowship doing down there? What are you all up to in the borderlands?
Well, we are working every day, especially with different pastors. So in my case, I have a mission statement, which is to empower migrants for a safe journey through the U.S.-Mexico border and train hosting communities, especially in the U.S., for impactful welcome and advocacy. Therefore, my ministry and the Cooperative Baptist ministry in this region is done actually in three contexts: the border, Washington, D.C., and Latin America.
Yeah.
Why? You may ask yourself, why? Well, first, I speak Spanish, which, and I'm bilingual, so that gives me an edge. But because the border is, and we need to understand, a lot of people think about the border as the place, as the end all and be all. But bear in mind, the border is the end of the journey for some, especially those that are stuck in northern Mexico, but the beginning of the journey for others. And I think migrants need to, and I think people need to understand that what happens at the border continues into our northern communities, I mean, inside the U.S., but what happens at the border started below.
But it's really a midpoint.
So
it's not the start or the end.
Correct. And so I think that, in that sense, I do missions with two audiences. I do direct services for migrants, and then I work in partnerships with pastors, churches, organizations, and coalitions that advocate and serve migrants, sometimes below the U.S.-Mexico border and sometimes once they get across. I work in partnership with, in close partnership with Fellowship Southwest, which is a partner that I work here at the border that has a network of 8 pastors that feed, shelter, and protect migrants all across and along the U.S.-Mexico border. And so that's why we sometimes understand what's happening on the ground before we start seeing the results here in the United States. With migrants directly in the direct services, I do consults, a lot of immigration consults, a lot of them. Documentation, legal documentation when it's needed. Conferences like this, I mean, interviews, conferences like the one I'm going to have tomorrow with 50 or 60 Hispanic Christian leaders in Panama through Zoom so that they understand what to expect with the probably shifting of border policies, because they also need to know how they advise those migrants that are coming through all of Central America. And I also do humanitarian work. I'm working to provide 800 shoes to migrant children in Matamoros. And this Monday, I'm going to have a pastor from Templo Bautista of South Houston, or Baptist Temple of South Houston, come here and bring me 80 backpacks full of goodies for migrants. Yeah, so that when they get across and they're released into a respite center, they have a backpack. But then when it comes to partnerships, like I said, I do it through Fellowship Southwest, providing updated information to these pastors, and at the same time gathering that information and helping them in any way, shape, or form they need so that they can provide, they can feed, shelter, and protect migrants.
Elket, it sounds
every day.
like you do about 100 jobs. But it also sounds like there's a lot of work to be done.
That's how it feels.
For those on the side of the border, you know, I'm up in Michigan, so I guess I'm by our northern border, but I'm far from our southern border. It's interesting, right? We also see CBP agents up here, but that's for, you know, to cross over to the Canadian border. But what we're hearing about in the news is this influx of migrants coming across the southern border. We're hearing about these unprecedented numbers of encounters or apprehensions, depending on what language people are using. So what have you felt a difference these past weeks and months? Like, what is this feeling like on the ground for you?
Yeah, so there's been difference, especially in the past 2 months. But before I say that, I want to help dispel some misinformation. There were 2.3 million apprehensions in the U.S.-Mexico border in the previous fiscal year.
And also, when I hear apprehension, I'm thinking of somebody getting arrested. Is that what you're talking about?
And what I'm trying to get is yes, but that does not mean that it's 2.3
Okay.
million migrants that were apprehended, because there are many migrants. The number of recidivists or repeat crossers, it's way high. So we would be saying that I think that almost 1/3 of those migrants are repeat crossers. I know the case of many migrants that have crossed once, I mean, 5 times, even 5 times. And why? Because of this border policy called Title 42, which in reality was created to deter migrants from coming. And on each and every day, every month, I see weeks, there's been say that respite centers in the United States were already overcrowded, and now more migrants are showing up. Uh, and even shelters in Mexico were overcrowded 2 months ago, and now more migrants are showing up in the past 2 months. As you know, the U.S. government rolled out a new program for Venezuelans in October 12th that resumed the implementation of Title 42 to Venezuelan migrants. And so thousands of Venezuelan migrants, and what I mean thousands is a lot of thousands of Venezuelan migrants are stranded all over the Mexico side of the U.S.-Mexico border. Ukrainians and Russians are also showing up. I'm here. I work with that in the past 2 weeks. Ukraine. And then on Monday, I don't know if you know about the caravan, primarily from migrants from Nicaragua, in a caravan try to cross the Juarez El Paso border as well. And just to add on top of that, everything that I said, thousands of migrants are coming in expectation of the potential end of Title 42 on December 21st. So what I'm trying to share with you and describe to you is that to say that the churches and organizations that are showing up and helping migrants on both sides of the border, and the pastors and the congregations that are working with migrants on both sides of the border are overwhelmed is an understatement. They are very super
It's
overwhelmed.
incredible how faithfully you all are continuing to do the work, but that sounds a bit of an impossible job. One thing I wanted to zero in on too that you're mentioning is I do think these apprehensions, they're including these asylum seekers in the numbers. So it's not as if apprehension means someone who is trying to run away from Border Patrol. It includes a whole lot of people who are looking for Border Patrol to say, I am here to claim asylum, please process my claim. And because of Title 42, which was implemented to try to stop the spread of COVID back in 2020, we're saying, no, you still can't make this claim. But as you're saying, it's being applied a bit unevenly. So it's not a great policy situation right now.
No, it is not a great policy, and my advocacy against it is it's not necessarily because, and I want to be honest and clear, it's not because there is not. I don't think that I have not met a lot of people that are Christians and advocate for asylum seekers that say, let's open the border and let everyone in. Okay, we want to, and I think that we all as Americans want to see the border obviously providing opportunities for those asylum seekers and being humanitarian, while at the same time being able to enforce correctly the laws that we have. But then Title 42, the problem is that the policy was created to deter migration, and that has not happened. The policy was created to help Customs and Border Patrol in the enforcement of this law, of the border. In the enforcement of part of the border, and so it has not. what it has created is actually what it has created is more migrants expecting to come to the United States in northern Mexico. So I don't think it has definitely has not worked, especially because migrants are not given the opportunity to be processed for asylum. And so if you give them the ability to be processed, then they'll understand there is a finality. I don't know if that's the word, but this is the end of the road for me. There has been an adjudication of my claim, and now I understand what my next step is going to be. But Title 42, since it's an expulsion and there is not a formal asylum proceeding, it kind of gives more hope, or not hope. It does not give the sense of this is the end of the process for migrants, but at the same time, it does not give the Customs and Border Patrol the same sense that this is the end of the
working
road
for either. It's not working to make our border more safe or secure, and it's not working to compassionately serve migrants. So, and that's what we say at Women of Welcome all the time. We are not saying open borders. We're saying we need safe and secure borders and compassionate treatment of immigrants, and those can go together. Those do not have to be one or the other. So,
have you heard the obviously, I know that you've heard the comment, work smart, not hard. Well, this is Title 42 is one of those issues when you start learning about it, you start asking yourself, is this a matter of working smart rather than hard? Because right now, our Customs and Border Patrol officials are working super hard, and
that's a really helpful perspective. So yeah, it sounds like they are having an incredibly challenging job right now. What you're saying is that migrants are going through unbelievably challenging circumstances to get to the border. What is the most challenging part of your work right now?
This that we're doing right now, which is misinformation, dispelling misinformation. Misinformation among migrants and hosting communities. When I mean hosting communities, I mean churches, organizations, even lay members, people that are hosting migrants about our U.S. immigration laws. The misinformation is huge. So migrants are not aware are not aware of the grounds to seek asylum in the United States. On the other hand, hosting communities like churches, organizations have many misconceptions about how to welcome, advocate, and assist migrants. Many churches and organizations want to help. So this is how I see it. Many churches and organizations want to help, but don't know how. And then many migrants are seeking help, but don't know how. and all of this misinformation does not allow us to connect the resources with the need, with the real needs. And the only way I think we can do this is by becoming a bridge. And that's what I try to do. Thank God that I'm bilingual. I can become a bridge by educating migrants and hosting communities on how to help and how to get the needs, and that takes me, like I said before, beyond the border to inform churches, Christian organizations like Women of Welcome on how to help, and go below the U.S.-Mexico border to do the same with churches in that context. So I see myself as a prophet speaking truth about the realities of a broken immigration system and the dynamics migrants face on their journey to the U.S. So misinformation is a huge problem, and when we go to the Bible, I think we can get the heart of where God wants us to help to welcome. But then when we go to the news, we start seeing all these barriers that are not helping us meet the need of migrants and follow through with that command to welcome the stranger.
That is so interesting, and I think it's an important call for our community here at Women of Welcome, because we might feel like we're far from the border and what can we do to help? What I'm hearing you saying is actually combating misinformation when we see it and educating ourselves actually helps you in your work at the border. And if we can bravely use our voices to speak up when we're hearing people say things that don't align with what Christ's heart is for refugees and immigrants, that's actually an act of service. That is a really, I think,
Yeah.
important message for those of us who feel like we're too far away to help. Which actually leads me to my next question. For those of us, I'm sure for the folks down in Texas, we can let them know where to find you to serve. But for the rest of us, how can we support what you're doing, Elket?
So, first thing, I mean, if I was asked this question the other day, like if there's one thing I can do, and to me it's advocate. It is easy. You don't have to. I mean, you just urge Congress and contact your senators and representatives because they need to reform our immigration system. Everything that is happening here is because our system is broken, and nobody has taken. I mean, not nobody. Congress has not taken on the task of finding solutions or passing solutions. Um, we need legislation that provides solutions to dreamers, farm workers, Afghans at the border. And let me be clear about this. A lot of people, I find a lot of people telling me, Elket, how would dreamers and farm workers help the border? And I would say immensely, because that would provide a legal pathway when it comes to farm workers to get into the U.S. and work. That would also fight inflation, by the way. When it comes to dreamers, that also opens new pathways for family members and relatives that want to come. And so, and we are actually, in a sense, taking a lot of pressure, taking pressure
putting that
from
valve a
what's
little
happening.
bit, like releasing some of the pressure.
Correct. I mean, if your church has a patronage and that is not being used for, or a property that that you may consider, hey, that you may use for something else, consider hosting an asylum seeker until he or she gets their work permit. I'm working with a church right now, Day Spring Baptist Church in Waco, Texas. We're doing that. Hey, you can open, your church can open an immigration legal services ministry to serve as an outreach for the community, and that will enrich your church. Another thing that can happen is sending clothes. Please, here's something interesting. Please do not send XL or double XL or 3XL clothes. I have not seen the migrant that wore those shirts, because I've gotten some of them and they don't fit. You can send travel kits, backpacks, shoelaces. When migrants are released from detention, their shoelaces are taken away inside and they're never given back. So they need shoelaces, shoes, Bibles. You know how many Bibles we need? Lots of Bibles. So, I would love for you to share my email, which is erodriguez@cvf.net. And please consider me a resource for you and or your church, or for whoever is listening, to help you discern about how to assist in this process. And the last way you can help, but it's the most direct way you can help. I don't like asking for money, but it's something that we do. It's by providing money to the offering of to my ministry programming budget through cbf.net/Rodriguez, or to the offering of global missions that actually pays for my presence in the Rio Grande Valley and here in the border through www.cbf.net offering of global missions. So those are different ways you can help. And if you want to send items, please contact me, because obviously that has to be, I do not give a list typically, because there are some logistical issues that may happen, and there are certain ports of entries and areas and shelters that may need different things, if you can say, and items.
And we will share all those links in our stories. So if you feel like I did not write that down in time, I will get all of those from Elket and we'll put it up, and make sure to share your email address, because you are clearly doing such incredible work at the border, really just being the hands and feet of Jesus to our migrant brothers and sisters. And it is really a joy to learn what you're doing. And you know, to see what that the church is alive and well on both sides of the border, and, you know, in the migrants and border patrol officers, and, you know, this is all a part of the church, and I think it's really exciting to get to hear what you're doing and come alongside you.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Elket.
No, my pleasure as always. And I'm here for anything you need, and it's good to share about how about this, because I'm doing what God has called me to do, and it's good to know that there's also other Christians around the country who have a heart for migrants, just like our Lord Jesus had, and, and it is an honor. It is an honor for me
We're
to be
so
here.
happy you're here. Yeah,
Thank you,
Women of
Brittany.
Welcome. I'm going to share more ways we can come alongside Elket. I'm going to share some advocacy opportunities, because if that is a way that we can help, then we want to join in with that. We have some tools that make it really easy for you to call your members of Congress, and it's the least we can do to help our brothers and sisters who are faithfully serving at the border every day. So thank you all so much. We'll talk soon, Elket. All right, bye.
Thank you.